I think we've learned so much from that crisis. We are surviving. There is still a beef industry in Ontario and in Canada. It's certainly not what it was pre-May 20th, 2003. Farmers haven't recovered from their price crises of that time period, and to this day, I think that a lot of consumers think the crisis is long over. The borders are open, things are back to normal, but farmers in Canada know day to day that their world has changed very much as a result of that. Agriculture as a whole has become a lot more proactive in getting our messaging out there. We're a lot more responsive. Instead of just complaining about an article that they see in a paper to their coffee shop friends now, they'll call their communication staff at various offices and say, we need to get on this. We're doing a better job of making farms accessible. So the Ontario Farm Animal Council now has online virtual tours where people can tour farms. If you've got questions about a beef farm, tour one virtually. We're doing a lot more media tours in Ontario, commodity groups getting together, putting reporters from downtown Toronto on buses and taking them out to farms for the day and saying, there's no stupid question here, ask whatever you want. And trying to show them that the best thing they can do to learn about agriculture is ask a farmer, because farmers are the experts in their area. And I think that farmers as a whole have realized the need for good communications. Prior to Walkerton, most of the commodity groups in Ontario had communication staff, but the staff didn't do that great a job of talking to each other. So the dairy communication staff worked specifically on dairy issues, the beef staff on beef issues, the hog staff on hog issues. About the time Walkerton happened, we were starting to realize that we could do a lot better job with our tiny resources and our one-people communications departments if we worked more closely together. And coincidentally, we had just started having joint meetings in a few months prior to Walkerton hitting. When BSE hit, I was absolutely amazed at the response of communication staff in the province of Ontario. That morning that BSE hit, I had phone calls from my colleagues at the Fruit and Vegetable Growers Association, Ontario Pork, Chicken Farmers of Ontario, and other groups saying, hey, can we come to your office? Can we answer your phones? Can we help you write press releases? What do you need? And for them to do that when this was not their crisis to manage was just fantastic. And I've seen the group of communication staff in Ontario and beyond become much closer as a result of that. We now meet 2 or 3 times a year to share ideas, share success stories, share concerns, share budgets on projects. We're now, as I mentioned, doing the joint Speak Up team training because we realize that these groups shouldn't be trained in isolation of each other. They should each know who each other is and realize that their problems aren't one just to their industry. And I think there's been a real bright spot come up in Ontario agriculture. Commodity groups are hiring more communication staff. Boards of directors are realizing that keeping quiet isn't the answer. Get out there quickly, get out there loudly, make sure the media knows who you are, and they're putting a lot more emphasis on budgets for communications exercises, more staff resources, etc. And I think that's all positive news for us. So after the crisis was over, the initial crisis was over, the public certainly seemed to think that the issue was past, the barbecues could die off, etc. And it was really important to us to make sure that the issue stayed alive in the media, that they knew that farmers were still struggling in the province of Ontario and beyond our borders, but our focus was Ontario. So we started a real campaign with our farmers, a lot of them Speak Up team members, a lot of them just members of their local cattlemen's association, writing letters to the editor in their local newspapers, opinion pieces, op-ed pieces. We would often help the farmers write them, and they'd put their names to them and personalize them a bit and send them in. And those, I don't think we had hardly any of them not picked up, because the newspapers were so excited about having that sort of thing come into them with unsolicited from their local farmers, that they did a great job of running them, often going out and taking pictures of those farmers, etc. We kept information kits going to the media about every 6 months saying, here's where the crisis is at, here's how much money Ontario beef farmers have now lost, here's the amount of farmers we think have left the business, here's what's still going on. We continued to hold information meetings both for farmers and for media, just updates every few months saying here's still what's going on. We did the same thing for politicians because, again, because it had left the headlines, politicians tended to think the crisis was over too. So again, putting those feelers out there, sending them regular updates saying, hey, here's what's still going on. And I think that the story's still in papers now and again. It's not certainly front page news anymore, but I think that farmers and our approach to it did us a lot in kind of continuing to keep that goodwill towards Ontario beef farmers going. I think that it's absolutely critical to have some sort of a crisis plan in place. Even more critical than that is knowing that that plan is never going to work perfectly. And that you always have to be ready to change your plan on the fly. But to have crisis plans in place that include key phone numbers of where you're going to find people, who are your spokespeople going to be on behalf of the industry, having everybody know what tools are available, having people know in an office, a small office, if a crisis hits on a Tuesday, drop your work and here's what your responsibilities are going to be. Having those sort of basic tools in place ready to go is absolutely critical. But always knowing that you're going to have forgotten something and that your plan will require revisions several times a day. But having all the key people up to date so that we can, we had triage meetings several times a day at the Cattlemen's Association saying, all right, how's everybody doing? What do people need? What haven't we thought about today? Here's what's come up. Here's how we deal with it. And so never being married to a crisis plan, but always having sort of a basic idea in place as to here's what we're going to have to expect, here's so that everybody knows what our tools are, and here's what we're going to have to be prepared to deal with. And I can't say enough about being prepared for that, but being prepared to alter your plan on the fly.